My name is Deanne Meyer, and I'm the Livestock Waste Management Specialist at UC Davis, and I'm really happy to have you join us today. We're going to have a webinar on how to use AMP funds to improve manure handling and reduce methane emissions. This project is funded through the California Department of Food and Agriculture and California Climate Investments, and also in great collaboration with the California Dairy Research Foundation. It's with great gratitude and appreciation that you all are taking time to come to the webinar today. Our project team is especially grateful for our cooperating dairy producers who provided access to their facilities to prepare for this webinar and future webinars. And today we're going to spend some time talking about mechanical separators. We're going to review why a producer might be interested in installing a mechanical separation system. Then we'll get a chance to go kick the tires of the system, so to speak, and watch a video and on one facility and another video clip from another facility. And lastly, we'll have an opportunity for the audience to engage one producer or a consultant who assisted a producer in their application process. So why use separators? The industry is striving to be carbon neutral or better by 2050. Keeping volatile solids out of ponds helps with this goal. Additionally, we know that many San Joaquin Valley dairies are located in Priority 1 management zones, indicated in red on this map of the Central Valley, and they may be interested in practices that relocate manure nutrients from the ponds to piles for off-site application. And the big point is being able to move manure down the road. Nationally, the dairy industry is promoting net zero carbon emissions or better by 2050. In California, we have our ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by 2020 and further reduce emissions by 40% in the next decade and 80% by 2050. Let's take a quick look at our California emissions to see how dairies contribute to our emissions. Last December, the 2018 scoping plan was released about a year and a half ago by the California Air Resources Board. This graph lists the scoping category across the bottom axis and the percent of the state's emissions for greenhouse gases on the left side. You can clearly see that transportation, industrial use, electric power, and commercial and residential building generate 86% of our state's greenhouse gas emissions. Livestock are responsible for 5.4% of California's greenhouse gas emissions. This includes livestock and poultry, as well as enteric emissions from animal regurgitation and emissions from manure management. Two key paths exist for dairy operators to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on their dairies. The first path is to install an anaerobic digester, capture biogas, and make RCNG, renewable compressed natural gas. More information is available from the California Department of Food and Agriculture on the Dairy Digester Research and Development Program. Since 2015, 119 projects have been funded for dairy digesters through the DDRDP. Other digesters have also been installed. An alternative to a dairy digester is to prevent manure solids from being in anaerobic conditions. That's what we have in dairy lagoons. The Alternative Manure Management Program encourages practices that prevent manure solids from entering lagoons. Since 2017, we've had 120 projects that have been funded for alternative manure management practices to be implemented on farms. And some of those projects have to do with separation of solids from the liquid waste stream. If we consider the function of mechanical separation, it'll take larger particles out of the liquid stream. This saves on pond clean out costs and frequency. The solids are usually dried and stockpiled or they're composted. The solids can be land applied to fields farther away from the production facility. And it's really important before this gets installed to think about how this fits in your management scheme. Regular maintenance is essential. This includes work done by dairy employees to clean screens, or monthly or quarterly visits from the company to maintain the mechanical components of the system, grease pumps, take care of equipment. Solids need to be stored where runoff can be collected. Often a separate electrical panel is also needed. So we went through the data from the 2017-2018 call for the Alternative Manure Management Practices Program. And the total project costs, including separation equipment and concrete pads for solids separation, range from $98,000 to over $884,000. And of course, the maximum amount of funds available from CDFA was $750,000. The operation and maintenance costs identified on these applications ranged from $4,800 to $16,430. So that just gives you a little bit of a price estimate from the 2017-2018 call. I want to call your attention to the fact that we put together through this project that we're doing collaboratively, the California Dairy Research Foundation and University of California, that we're doing collaboratively with the Department of Food and Agriculture. And you can find many fact sheets. This webinar will be posted afterwards, and some individual farm webinars. They'll be available on our website, and the QR code is listed here. So with that, we're going to watch a video, and you can take it, Julia, and share our video from Jack Ham's dairy with a mechanical separator.
My name's Jack Ham. My wife and I are the third generation of the Lima family to farm at Lima Ranch. Started in 1938 as a small pasture-based dairy, and over the years, my grandfather-in-law and father-in-law grew the dairy, and Patty and I have really tried to carry on that tradition. We went to the sustainability conference, and we listened to a lot of talks, and then started looking at AMP. Let's see what we can do, what's going to work on our facility to make us updated for the 21st century. So we went to the separation and solar drying, because we feel that we're going to be able to separate out the manure, haul it further away. We had a family meeting, and we go, yes, if we're gonna stay in this business, we need to go forward in this manner. The way this was designed back in the 70s was it would be all gravity flow, so it wouldn't have any pumps. Before, we had a very small separation pit on the north side where our dry cows and heifers were, and then a much larger pit down here. With this program, we were able to get funding to get all the water from all over the dairy to our separator. So that was a really great benefit from the AMP program. I would say have somebody knowledgeable. I thought my wife and I could do this with our son and daughter, and it was a little more intense than that. We used a private outfit. We had decided to do the separation and solar drying. We have US Farm System flush pumps here. I know their service. I went with somebody local. We changed a lot of the way we flush our system. We went from flushing out of our pond, going through a settling pond, back into the pond, and then flush again. US Farms recommended a processing pit. We collect the water, they stir the water up, it goes over the separator. Some of the water goes back into there and some goes into another pond. It's worked out really, really well. They recommended the pumps that would bring the water from the north side of the dairy, and this is really going to improve getting manure to those fields. I've found that the benefit of manure in the fields is water retention, because you improve the humus, and so you hold more water, especially in the more sandy loam fields. Because of our current drought, it's really to the forefront, and we have seen a real improvement in the fields where we're able to put more manure. We're able to get this dried here on the concrete, and then we can move it, and the bedding will go on another concrete slab. We started in August of 2020, and we had the US farm system running in mid-March, because included in this, we had to get more electricity, and the longest holdup was waiting for PG&E to install the electricity. That's our first challenge. The second challenge I would argue was getting your consulting team together. Who's going to walk you through the process? There's help out there to get that going. It's getting the permit process, realizing that if you're doing something electrical, the electrical has to be done first. Get that process going. The air board and/or water board need to be contacted early on in the process. We had to get an authority to construct because we did not have a separator on site, and actually it went pretty smooth with the air board. It's one of those things you call PG&E first, the air board second. I recommend having a third party help you because they will remember the dates and everything. It's been excellent. It will take a lot of stress off of doing this project. Have a budget. Have a budget, have a budget. You should be going about it. This is going to help me get on to the next level. Every other day maintenance, a weekly maintenance. US Farms does a quarterly maintenance for a year, and then we'll see how it works out. Everything is in the cloud. They can run everything from an office in another town. If we get an alarm, so does their office. And especially during startup, we were able to go, hey, we have an alarm. Yes, we know this is the alarm. This is what you do to reset it. And this is what you do to prevent it. The US farm system takes the large solids out. And UC Davis has been working with us on looking at how much solids they take out, and it's that large fiber that you see floating at the top of your ponds at certain times. We will stack the dried solids in a corral so that we can haul it off in the fall or in the spring. We've really improved our manure collection, and we can account for all the manure that we're generating. Patience is not my long suit, but we did it.
It was a wonderful opportunity to get out and visit with Jack and understand why he did what he did. We now have a question for those who are with us today. Julia, if you'll launch our polling question, please. Be sure everybody's still awake. You can go in and that should be on your screen. Select an answer. We can play the Jeopardy music. Thank you for that. So we have about half the people who answered said they aren't dairy producers. Some applied and didn't get funding, and others were successful, and some hadn't heard of the program. So that's great. A little bit of everything going on. For those of you who've worked on the program, then the next question for you is to put an answer in the chat if you wouldn't mind. I'm the right screen to share here. What was your biggest hurdle or concern about applying for this program? If folks want to share that information with us, we'd appreciate it. We're trying to figure out what information would be helpful or what kinds of assistance is needed. And if folks are bashful, that's another story. Permit questions, trying to get quotes in time. That's a huge challenge, and thanks for bringing that forward. It's a given that what both Jack and Doug shared was start early and start as far ahead as possible to give yourself as much leeway. And part of our objective in these webinars is to help provide some seeds to grow so people can think about what their project might be and how it will fit in their farming operation. So I think what we'd like to do now is we also had the pleasure of going out to Doug Beretta's dairy, the Beretta Dairy in Sonoma County, and we have a short snippet that talks about the separation technology that they put in over there. And we'd like to play that.
I really wanted to go with the automatic scraper. So we are scraping the freestall barn into a cross gutter, which then pushes the manure into a small retention concrete pit where the pump and the separator are established. The manure comes off the separator. This is a screw press separator. It's going into a pile where our objective was letting that manure sit for 3 days, getting it to between 140 and 160 degrees, turning it, and then going 3 more days and putting it back in the beds. We actually put up a 110 foot wide by 120 foot long barn to store everything, the separator, the stored manure, all under it. We chose JOZ scrapers, chain pulled scraper. Our goal was to have a one-stop shop. We wanted to make a phone call to the dealer, and one of the other reasons we went this direction was we could buy one that fit the size of our herd.
Thank you. Well, now's the time to answer questions if folks have them. And we're really grateful again to Doug and Jack for letting us on the property and coming out with a video crew and putting it together. And then, of course, with us today, we also have Denise Molinax, the director of the California Dairy Quality Assurance Program, the assistant director, and also the executive director for the California Dairy Research Foundation, and Jennifer Hagee, the Stanislaus Merced and San Joaquin County Dairy Farm Advisor, who was out on the video shoot for Jack Ham's Dairy, and then Randy Black, who provides assistance as a dairy advisor over in Sonoma, Marin, and Mendocino counties, who was out on the video shoot with Doug Beretta's Dairy. Jack's not able to join us today, but we're really excited to have Doug turn on his video and Ian Vietti to join us now. Ian happened to be the consultant Jack was bragging about earlier, who helped him put his application process together and kept him on track to be sure that he got the right paperwork back to CDFA so he could get paid in a timely fashion. And again, Doug is a producer from my old stomping ground, Sonoma County. So we'll highlight those folks. And then if people have questions, they're welcome to put it in the Q&A in the box. And having been both with Jack to do the video as well as Doug, I always have a list of questions that I'm happy to ask and check in on. So if folks don't want to put your own questions in the Q&A, we'll go with mine. So Ian, I'd like to thank you for spending some time with us today and for all the assistance you've done with dairy operators to get their applications in. And what would be your 2 or 3 main takeaways to suggest people do before they apply?
I think the biggest thing that you had mentioned earlier is start early. When I work with clients, I really like them to think 10 years ahead. So it's, the idea when putting together an AMP project is you really want to think, how do I want to be running the dairy in the next 10 years, and what is it going to take me to get there? And part of that is figuring out when applying, what sort of projects. It's easy to kind of think small, but putting together really a dairy going forward and looking at all the components necessary to do that, that takes time. But doing that will give you the greatest chance for success.
Forward thinking. If we're going to be in
Yeah.
the business down the road, it's important to think about where that down the road is going to look like. Thank you so much. I see we have a question from Frank in the Q&A wanting to know which system removes a higher percent of solids and what are the percentages? And we'll put a pin in that for a minute. But there's another question here, and that's how large is the Beretta dairy? And I think, Doug, maybe explain a little bit on why you went specifically with the separator you went with. We'll explain your herd size.
Sure. We went with the screw press with the JOZ screw press. They build a couple different sizes. So looking at some of the others that were on the market, they were actually a little bit too big for our operation. We milk about 300 cows. We're 100% organic, so our cattle are on pasture about 200 days out of the year also. So we just didn't need that larger separator that was going to cost a lot more money for the amount of manure that we're actually separating out of the freestall facility. We actually have, as Ian was saying, we've kind of planned also that we will be able to collect all of our wash down water from our corrals at the milk barn. Also, we've set up a pump that will pump right into that, and we'll be able to separate that also.
And then I'll take a stab at the which system removes a higher percent of the solids. Between these two systems, it's not which one is better, it's what kind of manure is going into them. You're not going to scrape down lanes and put it over a stationary inclined screen. That's not going to work. And if you have really thin water, which is basically what we're seeing at Jack's Dairy, 1 to 2% total solids, it's a bit of labor to try to run that through a standard screw press separator. And we're really grateful, Jennifer and Randy and I are grateful that both Doug and Jack have been participating in a research project that we're doing, a different project we have with the Dairy Research Foundation to look at manure characteristics. So at a later date, we'll be able to share that information with you on what's happening with those separators and what the nutrient composition is on those. So Doug, William Hart from the Goldridge RCD has a question for you about how did your project budget versus actual budget come out? And did you have some unexpected costs?
We actually are running right at budget. We're down, the project is almost complete. We're just waiting on some last invoices for this last quarter. Unexpected mainly was in the era of COVID was getting equipment to us. It kind of prolonged this project. And then when we bid it, the increase in concrete costs. So our concrete, when we did the bids back in 2019, we were almost 2 years, from into it before we actually started pouring concrete. So concrete had gone up $20,000 or $30,000, or excuse me, $20 to $30 per yard. So we were able to move things around and make it work. Was one of the good things with the AMP project. When you fill out the application, as Randy Black helped us really do that, you have a budget that comes from CDFA, and that's how you have to kind of stick to it. So it did help us a lot with that budget from CDFA moving forward.
And Ian, do you want to share how other folks that you've worked with have dealt with projected budget versus actual budget? Because I know especially in the 2019-2020 cycle, we had some huge increases in construction costs, as Doug mentioned.
Yeah, no, that 2019 cycle was a little bit hard. I build in 20%. So when I work with a vendor, if they tell me 100,000, I immediately think it's going to cost 120, and that's what I relate to the producer. That served me pretty well for the COVID era. One thing I think that most producers, when you're talking, especially you're shopping different technologies, is a lot of times vendors have a tendency to they're trying to get the sale. And so I think that 20% number in your head as a producer is a good place to be. If you think, hey, if I set my total budget as X, I would expect a 20% increase. Most of my clients, usually at the end of the project, are within a couple $1,000s. So it's served me pretty well.
And then I'm going to jump back over to Doug for a minute. Doug, do you want to explain the financial side of this as far as prepayment and what you need a loan for, what you needed a loan for?
So the way the project works is you submit your bills or invoices quarterly. So that was kind of one of the tough things for us. So we were able to get those submitted, but your vendors are wanting payment, for anywhere from 30 to 45 days. So by the time we got money, got the invoices submitted to CDFA, another COVID problem, they're all working from home. So we were seeing 45 to 60 days before we received payment after that quarter. So we actually did have to get into our credit line at our bank to kind of bankroll this project. In the end, it's worked out, but we ended up paying we paid some interest on money to get this thing done, where when I went in, I didn't know it was quite that way.
Yeah, and Jack's not able to join us this afternoon, but I actually was out at the dairy this morning, and one of his comments this morning was, I just worked out with all my vendors that they were going to get paid at 60 days. So if you have a vendor who will take that, that's another way to try to put the square peg in the round hole, so to speak, to make the money flow a little better. Thanks for that, guys. Joey's asking a question, are carbon air credits quantifiable and marketable? We've seen them, yes, over the years, and then no. And at the moment, I think we're still in a place on the manure side where we're trying to figure out how one would document what those emission reductions are. Predominantly what we look at on facility is what kind of volatile solids have been removed. And theoretically, one could calculate what the maximum methane emissions of that would be, but that's not really what you would take to a market. So there are a lot of moving pieces going on in air emission markets at the moment. And we should see hopefully some news coming out that would make those a little better marketable from an alternative manure management practice. Certainly if a person has a digester and you've got gas going through a meter, you know exactly what's coming through the facility and what's not being emitted to the atmosphere. So it's a great question, Joey, and thanks for bringing it up. And we have an individual asking a question, are screw presses are known for high wear rates, and has the technology changed to address that? And I don't know that the JOZ separator has been in long enough to have an answer on that. Do you have some thoughts, Doug or Ian?
We've been up and running with the separator since about March. Our biggest challenge was we were using sand as bedding prior. So trying to get all that sand out. So the first month or so, we were seeing some sand getting into that retention pond and going through the separator. But now we were looking at screens the other day, and they're, as we said, we're 4 to 5 months into it, and we're not seeing much wear at all with the manure that we're separating. So, I think the manufacturer is saying once a year you might have to change screens, but I'm hoping to go a little bit longer than that. We're seeing still great material coming out of it at this point.
And we had the kind of separator you're using, the tree screw press. We've had on dairies both in the valley and over in the Sonoma Marin area a couple of decades ago, I guess. And those run on the higher solids content going through them in the first place. So the material going through is well over 6% total solids, whereas what's coming over a mechanical separator is usually 2% total solids or less. And as Doug mentioned, the sand is a real stickler on those, and it's tough on every pump there is and every metal surface that it comes in contact with. So, this is a time will tell as to how well this does on the dairy. So Ian, you as an individual who's provided services to quite a few dairy facility operators, what would you say their feeling is at the end of the program and maybe 6 months later? Are they glad they went through the process, or are they wishing they hadn't done the AMMP process?
It's my hope that they're all glad. I haven't had any real complaints yet. I mean, when it comes down to it, the state of California has been investing heavily into their facilities. And again, it's that future proofing, taking the facility to the next level, helping them to be more environmentally friendly, be able to export manure in a solid form is really helpful. So, there's been times where there's been some grumbling through the process because it can be a little bit painful at times. But, when it's all said and done, the facility usually has always been better. And it's, there's a little bit of a time to adapt to the new system, but once it really runs, they see a lot of benefit.
And I think every one of us knows whenever construction is going on anywhere, we have to bring an extra serving of patience to the party because stuff happens and it has to get dealt with in real time. All the while, people are milking cows 2 or 3 times a day and feeding cows, and we can't shirk those responsibilities at a dairy. So I definitely want to thank both Ian and Doug for joining us, and also to let folks know that we'll have Jack's video up online soon, and Doug's video is almost finished. We're just putting the finishing touches on that. And we'd like to ask you another question again. So Julia, if you wouldn't mind going to our next poll question, that would be great. And this is for dairy operators who happen to be with us. So we have one person in the process of adopting a mechanical separator, and quite a few consultants or individuals who are not dairy operators, so it's not applicable at all.
You also had one other question come into the Q&A. I don't know if you want to address that.
Oh, is there a technology to dewater their scraped solids? Scraped solids from, which is what Doug has, get dewatered through a screw press separator traditionally. The other technologies that are available right now that potentially could Dewater would be steam or pyrolysis, and it wouldn't likely handle the scrape material. It would need to have more water in it in order to get all of the water out of it. So at least at the moment, we don't have a technology available, and the scrape solids predominantly are, again, they're going to run in that 8 to 12% total solids, depending on how much bedding is in with the manure and how warm it is outside, or how much cow cooling water might be in with the manure. And with that, our next polling question is about information for the next webinar. We have options: a compost bedded pack barn, or information on nutrient management. Always curious what folks are interested in. And again, we're really grateful from, my colleagues at the University of California. We are so grateful that dairy producers allow us on their property to sample manure and understand more about how to manage facilities that have these different treatment technologies and what to do with the nutrient content. So we say a huge thank you for that. And as always, we're grateful to the California Dairy Research Foundation for providing funding to analyze manure content, manure questions, and help improve the dairy industry. Before we close, I would like to say that, Doug mentioned that his local dairy advisor helped put his package together over in Sonoma and Marin County. We do also have some climate smart specialists, community educators located throughout the state with UC Cooperative Extension, and these folks can help producers access the SWEEP, the Healthy Soils, or the AMMP project, other projects with CDFA. So I'd certainly encourage folks to look them up if you're in an area where you may not have an Ian Vietti who could come and help you, but where you want to get some help both in the application and the implementation phase of a CDFA program. So on behalf of our project team here at UC Davis, Mark Cooper, who's in human ecology and animal science, and his graduate student, Natalia, myself, Jennifer Hagee, and Randy Black with UC ANR, and of course our collaborators and colleagues at the California Dairy Research Foundation, Denise Molinax, Dr. Kevin Comerford, and Kim Yaris. We say thank you so much for coming and spending part of your afternoon with us. Feel free to drop an email if you have questions for follow-up afterwards. And stay healthy. We all want to be around for our next webinar. We'll see you soon, and be safe.